this ordinance and this bill when it was a proposed bill. Anand Gadgil, first to you. You were on my show yesterday where you vehemently backed this ordinance and said that doesn't matter odd MP speaking out. And here we have the number 2 of your party, well, the boss really, saying that no, this is complete wrong and should be thrown into the dustbin. How do you explain this?
What I spoke on your channel yesterday was simply what was the thinking behind taking such a decision in the cabinet. Today, our leader and Vice President Shri Rahul Gandhi has made the most sensible statement calling the ordinance as nonsense. The essence of democracy is you have the right to differ. I can give you 2-3 examples. In the early 70s in Maharashtra, the government had taken a stand on how the economic approach of the state should be. The party had a different view. In Kolkata, you had seen CPM had a different party had a stand. The ruling government had that time a different stand. During Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee's days, Mr. Vajpayee was very much against Mr. Modi. Party had one stand after the riots.
But
Vajpayee ji and the government had a different stand.
But sir, obviously
so there have been examples in the country where government stand is different.
I'm really sorry to interrupt you, sir.
And the party is
Mr.
different.
Gadgil, I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but you're trying to point out how the parties always had a different stand, and it's free to do so. But I just want to point out Ajay Makan's stand was also pro-ordinance during that press conference. It only changed afterwards. And you as well yesterday were voicing the party line, which is also pro-ordinance. So are you saying now that it's all changed? And,
no,
in effect, no sir, my other thing is, in effect, are you all now anti everybody who was for the ordinance, which includes everybody in cabinet and the Prime Minister?
It's not the question of whether we are for or against. We are not against any individual. We are on the issue. We are against the decision taken about the ordinance. And Congress has given a clear signal, right, starting from introducing Right to Information Act, where we brought in transparency both in the government as well as the administration. The Congress concept is very clear. And so also today our stand is very clear. We don't want people to continue those who have tainted images, those who have been, criminal records of proved guilty somewhere. So that stand is absolutely clear.
Okay, and
I repeat what I was talking yesterday was simply that it was a cabinet decision. Cabinet doesn't consist only of the Congress party. This is UPA. This is a coalition government.
Okay.
And therefore there are certain decisions taken by the government because of certain prevailing conditions, some issues come. That is how the decision was taken. That I tried to explain yesterday.
Sir, it's very interesting you're saying that it's a UPA decision and it was taken by cabinet. I just want to point out that NDTV has been reporting and sources have confirmed to us that the decision for going ahead with this ordinance was actually at the core group, which took place on the 21st of September, which means that it had the stamp of approval of the Congress President Sonia Gandhi as well. So you have to admit that what you're calling a very sensible move now to completely dismiss the ordinance, the previous move was Sonia Gandhi's.
No, as I said, the only what could be the complications, what could be the implication, all that was discussed. The Congress party had never taken a direct stand. The decision was taken in the cabinet. Today we have taken a direct stand.
Okay.
Only the discussion came up. I don't know the detailed discussion what took place.
Okay, Pinky Anand, Mr. Gadgil, they're trying to explain what has actually changed in a matter of minutes. We saw Ajay Makan stand before, and he's the chief spokesperson, then after. So what I
must praise Mr. Gadgil for his. I must praise Mr. Gadgil for his ingenuity. I mean, this is a most peculiar kind of situation. You have the core group agreeing with the ordinance, you have the cabinet clearing the ordinance, you have the ordinance going ahead. Then, of course, what happens is the president finds that the ordinance has some difficulties with it, calls for clarification, 2 ministers in the first instance. Then Mr. Kamal Nath is also called, so 3 ministers of UPA government are called. The ordinance is right now at the threshold of being rejected by the President, at least on the face of it. We can't guarantee, but that seems to be the stand. There is complete opposition by the BJP. The BJP has approached the President.
Yes.
There are also other parties who are opposing this ordinance. And today, suddenly out of the blue, in a press conference,
yes,
by a person, I might say, or by Prince Charming, who is not part of the cabinet, comes out with a vociferous statement while the Prime Minister is having bilateral talks in America with the President of the country.
Yes.
And this statement is made in language which probably is not befitting somebody. To say it is trash, it is nonsense. I mean, this kind of unparliamentary language being used to justify as if
actually,
the whole position is like an orchestra. You orchestrate something.
Anand, it's interesting you talk about the unparliamentary language, because we're least focusing on it because the other stuff just takes over. Now, if I could just go across to Jay Panda. Jay Panda, you have been completely... Yes.
You're right, but just let me finish one part to say this, that this entire process is only orchestrated to try and propel Mr. Rahul Gandhi forward, which I'm afraid is an attempt which everybody sees through. This is a complete facade, and this is just trying to take the public for a ride.
Okay, Jay Panda, I've seen your comments on Twitter ribbing the Congress party for what seems to be a complete change of stance, but some people are suggesting, and perhaps you can empathize with it, being a young MP yourself, that this may be an assertion of Gen Next in the Congress party. This, because yesterday we heard Milind Deora speak against it. Then this morning we heard Sandeep Dixit speak against it. And then it's just then topped off with Rahul Gandhi coming and saying, I don't know what the government is saying, I'm against this. We're of course also then in the Prime Minister's statement, we hear that Rahul Gandhi before that had also emailed the Prime Minister. Of course, the Prime Minister hadn't seen that because of the time difference, so he didn't see that email telling him about his opposition to this ordinance. What do you make of this fact that, do you think this is part of Gen Next asserting itself and perhaps asserting themselves and making sure that they have a say within the UPA and the Congress party?
Well, Sunetra, as you know, I have been championing this particular issue for many weeks, and not just I, but others in my party as well, and a few colleagues from other parties as well have been championing this issue.
I'm sorry, Jay Panda, 1 second. I'm just going to interrupt you. We have Barkhadat live from Washington with reactions of what the Prime Minister's office officials are telling her. Barkha, go ahead.
Sunetra, we're coming to you live from the North Lawns of the White House. In a few moments from now, behind me, the Indian Prime Minister will arrive to meet with US President Barack Obama. But the sad truth is that this is a meeting that has first been shadowed by the terror strikes in Jammu and Kashmir, and now by the political bombshell, the political quake in Delhi that has sent shockwaves all the way up to Washington. At first, it seemed that the Prime Minister would not respond. He did not want to be drawn into a domestic political dispute here on foreign soil. However, the Prime Minister did issue a brief statement, and the Prime Minister has made the point that all the issues raised by Rahul Gandhi, interestingly sent to him in an email as well before Rahul Gandhi's press conference, but the email read by the Prime Minister only after his press statement because of the time difference, that is something that will be discussed at the Cabinet. But Sunetra, we want to say to you that this is a huge embarrassment for the Prime Minister. This is a severe undermining of his authority. Even though the Congress is at pains to say that is not true, we are confirming to you that this was a political decision. This decision was taken on the 21st of September at a core group of the Congress party. That meeting was attended by the Congress President Sonia Gandhi as well. Ministers in the government now asking why the Prime Minister is being isolated for the blame, or the government is being isolated for the blame, when the Congress President and other top leaders of the party were on board with this decision. Also, strong reactions coming in from the opposition. Sanjay Baru, the former media advisor, telling me that if he were the Prime Minister, he would quit and take the first flight back home from Washington. But the Prime Minister's statement been extremely muted, extremely guarded, trying to take the media focus off this story and bring it back to the bilaterals, this third summit meeting with Barack Obama, the other contentious meeting coming up with Nawaz Sharif in New York. I don't know if that strategy is going to work. I was just interviewing Arun Jaitley, the leader of the opposition, and Arun Jaitley raised an important and a scathing point. He said that the Prime Minister stands diminished. With what authority is the Prime Minister now conducting these bilateral meetings? So as I stand here today on the north lawns of the White House, waiting for the Prime Minister to arrive for his third summit meeting with Barack Obama, it was first terror strikes and now domestic political strife that is tailing the Prime Minister all the way here. A very, very muted statement, a very guarded statement. Jay Panda, I believe, is with you, and I'd be interested in asking Jay, while you were among the first people to oppose the ordinance, are you convinced by Rahul Gandhi's response? Because we are having comments being asked by the BJP asking, where was Rahul Gandhi all this time?
Well, my answer to that would be that I believe in the issue, and I don't want to get caught up in personalities. So as somebody who has been championing the fight against this ordinance, and even when it was a bill in Parliament, I welcome anybody who joins the bandwagon in this movement. Now you could argue that this position could have been taken 4 weeks ago when the matter was live in Parliament. It could have been taken 4 or 5 days ago when it was on the front pages of every newspaper and TV channel in India when the ordinance was about to be issued. But be that as it may, maybe it is done for political expediency, maybe it's trying to make a virtue out of a bad position, but whatever be the reason, I think it's a good thing that this will now cause the ordinance to be withdrawn, because that's been already stated by other Congress spokespeople, that once Mr. Gandhi has spoken out against it, this can be withdrawn. I just wish that the nation had not been put through this ordeal for the past several weeks, when the very, the very basic ethics of our public life came into question, because it seemed as if the government and elected officials were willing to do anything to protect themselves at the cost of the Constitution and at the cost of the nation.
Well, Jay, but the question still does remain that while the Prime Minister is on foreign soil, does India stand embarrassed with this domestic dispute?
Well, see, generally it's a pretty standard practice for politicians when they are traveling abroad not to at least criticize their country and not to get drawn into domestic disputes. But the Prime Minister on this issue is in a very embarrassing position, because from what I could make out from Mr. Gandhi's press conference, he's attacked the government. Now, it's another thing that the government is dominated by his party, and there must have been some party sanction, there must have been some discussion in the party before the government issued this ordinance. But the fact is, it is embarrassing to the Prime Minister, and trying to wish it away is not going to work. He is going to get a barrage of questions while he is there and when he is back, and he finally, I think, has to take a stand on this issue.
Do you agree with the BJP that the Prime Minister stands diminished and that he needs to assess whether he should continue in office? Do you think the debate has actually shifted from that of political accountability to the dual centers of power in the government? And why do you think the Prime Minister is being isolated for this decision when the Congress President was also party to it?
Parkha, I think this is only the latest in a series of developments over several years when the Prime Minister's office has kept on getting diminished, one incident after another. And you're right, why should the Prime Minister himself be the only one? Because that is where the buck ought to stop, because he is the head of government. And whether you like it or not, you can say that the decision may have been taken behind the scenes in the party, but it is the government which actually proposed and issued the cabinet ordinance, and somebody has to take the blame for it, and ultimately it has to stop at the highest levels.
Well, here in Washington, it's a very muted statement, despite the demands being made by former media advisor Sanjay Baru that the Prime Minister should quit and take the first flight back home. The Prime Minister's office really trying very hard, Sunetra, to bring the focus back on the bilaterals, the third summit meeting taking place right behind me in a short while. The Prime Minister will arrive. And Jay, one more question for you. Do you see this as a generational shift in politics? Because we actually saw the younger people speaking out first. Do you believe that Rahul Gandhi is finally stepping up to this plate? Because another critical question being asked is, how can Rahul Gandhi constantly position himself as an outsider when he's so much part of the system?
Well, as far as Mr. Gandhi is concerned, I don't think this is any turning point at all, because any time within the last 9 years, he could have taken a stand and he could have influenced the government's decision in a very big way. But as far as other younger members of Congress speaking out, you know, the fact is Milind Deora is a minister and he spoke out against his government's decision, which I think is a very important development. And I think what it reflects is particularly the younger members and particularly those who represent urban constituencies are today facing the heat of a growing electorate, particularly middle class and the aspirational middle class, who are no longer willing to tolerate this kind of chicanery, this kind of brazenness. And I think that is forcing them to stand up to their own parties, and I think that's a good thing.
All right, before we hand it back from here on the North Lawns of the White House to Delhi, just to bring our viewers up to speed with what's been happening here, a muted, carefully worded statement from the Prime Minister in response to Rahul Gandhi's bombshell, a bombshell that many people believe have embarrassed and diminished the Prime Minister's authority vastly, especially as he's traveling outside India here in Washington, where he'll be meeting with Barack Obama at the White House, where I'm standing in a short while from now. Arun Jaitley speaking to me, asking that with what authority is the Prime Minister now conducting these bilateral meetings, saying that the Prime Minister needs to assess whether he can continue in office. His aides saying there's no question of the Prime Minister resigning, although that advice came from none other than the Prime Minister's own former media advisor, Sanjay Baru, who said that his authority had been eroded so badly that he should just take the first flight back home from Washington. We're also confirming to you a story that NDTV broke, that ministers in the government confirming to us that this was a political decision, perhaps one related to Lalu Prasad Yadav, whose verdict is expected on the 30th, and that Sonia Gandhi was party to this decision. So what we're really seeing here is maybe a generational revolt in the party, but a lot of criticism of Rahul Gandhi, that how can he position himself as the outsider. Jay, I want to ask you one last comment. Do you believe this will be a watershed moment, despite all the embarrassment, the political strife around it, for the cleaning up of politics? And what does this do to Lalu Yadav? Where does this leave him as a political player? We, of course, don't know what the verdict will be.
Well, when it comes to Laluji, the verdict has not yet come in, so let me not speculate. But certainly in another case, a sitting MP has recently been convicted. And if this ordinance is no longer to go through, he will get disqualified, because the Supreme Court's judgment is now the law of the land. And I think this is a turning point. Now, it may or may not be a big turning point, depending on how other such issues are dealt with. You know, this is one issue. It's you know, going to be off the front pages after the next few days. The question is, there are many such other issues where the public is very agitated, and not only the government, but many politicians and political parties, even in the opposition, are out of sync with the public mood. And I think it remains to be seen whether they are readjusting. I think this will be a force this will force political parties and elected officials to readjust themselves to being more sensitive to the public mood. The old ways of doing politics, I think, will take a hit on this incident.
Well, we're getting news that the Prime Minister has spoken to Congress President Sonia Gandhi from Washington. The Congress President was part of that meeting that initially endorsed this decision on the ordinance on the 21st of September. The PM now speaking to Sonia Gandhi. Our sources also confirming to us that Rahul Gandhi sent an email to the Prime Minister, but it was an email that he read after Rahul Gandhi had already spoken to the press because of the time difference, the time zone differences between the United States of America and India. Anand Gadgil is joining us from the Congress. Anand Gadgil, the Congress spokespeople who had to spend a week defending this ordinance, are now falling over themselves to criticize it. It just shows a certain amount of intellectual fickleness. And while Rahul Gandhi may be on the right side of public opinion, the fact of the matter is he's not just embarrassed the Prime Minister, he's also embarrassed his own mother, who was party to this decision. Your quick reactions as we wind up here at the White House.
No, where is the question of creating problem or diminishing the image of the Prime Minister? It was not the decision of Mr. Prime Minister alone. It was the collective decision of the cabinet. Secondly, as I said on your channel or various other channels yesterday, we were simply talking about what could be the possibilities of, behind taking such a decision. Whether Srimati Sonia ji was there or not, or what they discussed, I am not aware of. But what could have been the reasons, that all we explained yesterday. Congress had not taken an open stand, number one. Number two, we have been talking about Rahulji was continuously on tour. Let us not forget that. He was also on tour for the last 5-6 days. In fact, we were with him when he came to Pune and Maharashtra. Then again he was out of state.
I must interrupt you.
So Rahulji had just...
Sir, I must interrupt you. I must interrupt you to make the point that while Rahul Gandhi may have been on tour, that it's a bit disingenuous for the Congress to now say that they never defended the ordinance. Till this afternoon, Kapil Sibal and Ajay Markan were defending the ordinance.
No, the question is raised, why did he come and announce today?
No, I'm asking many other questions, and yes, one of them is where was Rahul Gandhi all this while? But you will continue that conversation. You will continue that conversation with Sunetra and Jay. We'll hand it back right now to Delhi at the White House on the North Lawns, waiting for Manmohan Singh to arrive, coming here besieged with a political controversy that has tailed him all the way to Washington, about to meet Barack Obama, as Arun Jaitley asks, with what authority is he now conducting these bilateral meetings? From the White House in Washington, back to you, Sunetra, in the Delhi studio.
Thanks, Barkha. And as we're reporting as well that the Congress claims that the allies are with them, we also have Aarti Jairath here in studio to break it down. She'll give us that. But just before I go to Aarti, I just want to get Majid Memon in. Congress claims that all of you were on board. Now that you see you were for the ordinance, now that you see Rahul Gandhi make the Congress do a whole turnaround, how do you react?
Now, Sumitra, the first thing I have been hearing everybody patiently, and Barkha also. Now, let me tell you one thing, that it doesn't befit, whether it is Arun Jaitley or any other BJP leader, or for that matter any opposition political party, to create any kind of bad impression outside when the Prime Minister is busy in carrying further the national interest in bilateral talks with US or Pakistan, etc., etc. You see, there is no political, there is no constitutional crisis in India, mind you. Now, let me make it very clear. There is no constitutional crisis. There is no breakdown of the government because there is some violation of constitution. Nothing of that side at all. What has happened is that there is a bit of confusion or some problem within Congress party.
It's an understatement.
Maybe it could be because of lack of communication. Maybe probably a tall leader, a tall young leader may have outspoken and used some harsher words, but then that does not affect in any way.
Okay, so what does it impact and affect, Aarti Jairath? You have to, Rahul, Prime Minister has clarified in his statement that Rahul did write to him, but he only wrote to the Prime Minister about his objection today.
That's right.
In an email, and the Prime Minister had to hear the press conference first because of the gay, and then read this mail. So how would you take, is it too late, as the oppositioners Pinky Anand and the BJP have been pointing out, is it too late? And should he have acted before? If he was really against this, should he have spoken up much before?
No, clearly he should have, Sunetra. I mean, I think there are no two ways of looking at it. See, there are several aspects to this. One, of course, is the stand that Rahul has taken, and I think that's a stand that is in keeping with the national mood, which was against the ordinance. And I think that cuts across party lines, it cuts across, communities, it cuts across regions and so on. Right? That's one. And for that, it's a good thing that Rahul has finally, spoken up on it. The other is the way he has done it. He could have, for instance, just silently behind the scenes told the Prime Minister that, look, we shouldn't go ahead with it. Let's withdraw the ordinance now because it's bad.
Right.
Or he could have held a more dignified press conference in which he could have said that, it's my view that this ordinance is not right, and I would suggest to the Prime Minister that the government consider withdrawing it. Instead of which he used very strong and harsh language, calling it complete nonsense and saying that it should be torn up and thrown. Now, was it just Rahul Gandhi's bad communication? Or is there a design to this? And I think that there is...
He's been accused of bad communication before.
Sure, absolutely. That, he's awkward with his words and so on. But I think that there's more to this. I think that, as elections are drawing closer, and clearly the popularity of the government is declining, I think Rahul Gandhi is trying to distance himself from the government and the various unpopular decisions that it has taken, both on the ordinance, starting with the ordinance, but I think also some of the economic decisions.
He's trying to
I think we're going to see more and more of this as the elections
But the question
draw closer.
really is, can he distance himself as the number 2 and as the Vice President? Mr. D. Raja, The CPI, do you buy this turnaround? Are you welcoming the fact that you've been opposing this ordinance? Do you welcome the fact now that thanks to Rahul Gandhi that they are perhaps likely to withdraw the ordinance?
Definitely, I am one of the first, my party is one of the first to oppose this ordinance. Now, finally, some good sense has prevailed upon the Congress party. The vice president of the party coming to the press conference and saying that the ordinance itself is a nonsense and it should be torn and thrown into dustbin. So Congress party has taken a stand. That's what I understand. Okay. Once Congress party has taken such a categorical stand to oppose that ordinance, government has no other option to withdraw it. That is the only course available for the government. Whether Prime Minister remains in US or comes back and whatever he is going to discuss in the cabinet, finally, I don't think government can go ahead with this ordinance. It has to give up the idea of this ordinance.
Oh, okay, and if I can just go across to Anand Gadgil as well, what now seems to be, if you are taking back the ordinance, as you've also said, it's the most sensible thing to do, that they've spoken out against the ordinance. What happens to your ally Lalu Yadav? He's expecting the verdict, everyone's expecting the verdict on Monday, and this entire move was said to be coordinated for his benefit.
No, like what I have been saying for the last 2 days, why should we assume that the verdict is going to be against Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav? Why make an hypothetical assumption? Let us wait for the verdict to come. And as I have repeatedly said, that the decision of the Congress has nothing to do with what verdict is likely to become. Number one. Number two, what I am getting at, I fail to understand how should Mr. Rahul Gandhi perform? Because till yesterday, there was a talk that why is Mr. Rahul Gandhi silent on the issue? Now that he has made the party position very clear, people are saying, why is he, distancing himself from the government? So if Rahul Gandhi keeps quiet, there is a criticism. If Rahul Gandhi says something, again there is a criticism. So what do you expect, Mr. Rahul Gandhi? He in fact has reflected the sentiments and the mood of the people today. After gathering everything after his tour, he has made a very categorical and very sensible statement.
But I want to ask your ally, NCP, Mr. Memon, that, isn't it embarrassing for you? The Congress, of course, is saying that, the divergent, but you have backed throughout this entire episode. You backed them when they were, proposing the ordinance. You're backing them now. Isn't it embarrassing for you as an alliance, as an ally?
No, now see, Sumitra, let me make a few clarifications. As an NCP political party, we want to make it absolutely clear that we are not for protecting convicted MPs and MLA. The law which was required to be modified post Supreme Court verdict has number of implications and number of side effects. Okay. Now even BJP, which is today shouting the chorus that, well, now Rahul says that and we have been saying that the ordinance is bad. Please try to catch up the double speak of BJP. They are asking resignation of the Prime Minister on the drop of the hat. In fact, they have blocked the proceedings in the Parliament demanding unjustifiably resignation of the Prime Minister. That's the history, recent past.
A lot of situations.
Please ask them, were they not in agreement?
You do
they
know
were
in the cabinet meeting,
with the
your
spirit
party,
of this law. Now, please give me 1 minute.
At the cabinet meeting, just want to tell our viewers why we are asking NCP is because at the cabinet meeting, Praful Patel.
No, one sentence I must say. All political parties had in fact agreed for this amendment.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, we are right.
Okay, I just want to come to you.